Howdy, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Bean on the Scene. I am Alma Bean, and we had college football this weekend, so I'm still in shock that we have made it to this point. So let's make sure that all of our socials are up and running. You can go on X at AlmaBean23. You can go on YouTube at Bean on the Scene 801. Or you can go on to Twitch at Mr. Beanie Baby dot or nope, no dot. Mr. Beanie Baby 19. Um, so looks like we are live there, and there. So, um, let's get into it. First game was that I'm going to talk about is BYU versus Portland State. Um, this was the first game that I got to watch on Saturday. I had to backtrack for Utah State and UTEP, but we will get to that game later. This game, it was either very exciting or very defeating, depending on which side you were rooting for. But um, for the first 8 minutes, Portland State, they looked like they were going to be able to hang with BYU at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. But Matthias Uribe, he attempted a 57-yard field goal that would end up shifting the momentum, but for BYU's side. Uribe kicked the ball so low that it ended up hitting John Talmopiao. I believe I said that right. I'm pretty sure I'm probably a little bit wrong, but we're hoping that's correct. It hit him in the face, right in the face mask, and it went directly right into the turf. And Jack Kelly from BYU would pick up the blocked field goal and take it back to the house for the first touchdown of the Cougars season, giving them the 7-0 lead. The following BYU possession, running back LJ Martin on their first play would run for 49 yards, which would eventually set up a touchdown pass to Chase Roberts from 4 yards out, giving Bear Bachmeier his first career collegiate passing touchdown to end the first quarter. Following possession for BYU after that, as BYU is already leading 14-0, Bachmeier would then lead the Cougars on a 7-play, 48-yard drive with a touchdown pass to Noah Moaki for 5 yards, being the cherry on top to give BYU the 20-0 lead. Next time the Cougars would get the ball, it'd be a little tricky with a couple of fake handoffs on a single play before it would end up in the hands of Cody Hagan, who would end up running for 57 yards to give BYU the 28-0 lead. Portland State, on their following possession with 6 minutes and 40 seconds left in the first half, on the Portland State 20, the Vikings quarterback Andre Miller would fumble the ball that would not only result in losing 14 yards, but it would end up being recovered by Talmopiao. Yeah, I think that sounds a lot better than the first time I said his name, John. He would recover that, and it would eventually lead to yet another BYU touchdown. This time, Bachmeier would get it in with his legs on a 4-yard rushing touchdown, which would put the BYU up 35-0. BYU would then score 2 more times before the end of the first half, one of them being a Carson Ryan 22-yard receiving touchdown, and then Bear Bachmeier getting a 12-yard rushing touchdown, which they would go into the locker room with a 49-0 lead at the half. Bachmeier would end his night there. He would finish the night with 7 passes completed, 11 attempted for 97 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, along with 5 carries, 32 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. This would also lead to Bear Bachmeier being named the Big 12 Freshman of the Week. So congratulations to him. But after allowing 47 yards on the first 2 drives, BYU would hold Portland State to just 2 total yards from that point on, totaling 49 total yards in the first half. In the second half, BYU still had the driver's seat all to their own. But this time, the next scoring opportunity would be from their kicker, Will Farron. But it wasn't just once, it was twice. The first field goal was for 25 yards. The second one ended up tying the school record for the longest field goal in school history at 56 yards, which would put BYU up 52-0. Starting in the fourth quarter, Dominique McKenzie would end up scoring on a 41-yard run to make it 62-0. Then the bleeding would eventually come to an end after a 5-yard rushing touchdown by Charles Miska to give BYU the final score, 69-0. Now, to remind everyone, my prediction was 52-7. So BYU did a little bit better than I anticipated. They still blew out Portland State as I anticipated. But given that performance, it wasn't enough for them to reach the top 25, but they were the first team left off. They had the most amount of votes amongst the AP voters at 102, but that was released earlier today on September 2nd. And like I stated earlier, Bachmeier was listed as the Big 12 Freshman of the Week. So you got some major things to be really proud of in this first game, even though it was against an FCS school. You proved that you can blow out these lower level schools that you are anticipated to beat very easily. Now, for their next game, it's going to be on Saturday, September 6th versus Stanford at 8:15 p.m. Mountain Time on ESPN. If you want to hear some more inside of that game, you are always more than welcome to tune into the College Football Saturday show from 10 to noon for pregame analysis on the KSL Sports Zone, whether that is 97.5 FM, 1280 AM, or the KSL Sports app. But then following the game, tune into the Cougar post-game show, which again will be on KSL Sports Zone, specifically 97.5 FM and the KSL Sports app. Now, as far as their game going into face Stanford, I do believe that there will be more scoring from Stanford's side, but I don't believe it's going to be much. I believe BYU will win 42-16, just because Stanford heavily relied on their kicker Emmett Kenny so much to keep things close in their 23-20 loss to Hawaii in week 0. So, given that information, knowing that BYU is a much more difficult opponent than Hawaii, I do expect them to lean a lot on their kicker. I do believe that they will move the ball down the field, but ultimately BYU's offense and defense will prove to be too much for the Cardinals. Now, the next game we're going to talk about is Utah at UCLA, which was at 9 p.m. Mountain Time, and that game was on Fox. I can tell you I was exhausted by the time that game was over, because I ended up not even getting out of the studio till roughly 1:30, 1:45 in the morning. So that meant that there were some great things that we were looking at for this game. And just as a reminder, this game, ESPN Analytics only had Utah with a 47.9% chance of winning. So this was what the expectation was. It is the Rose Bowl, Pasadena. It's such a historical place to play. And with UCLA having that home crowd, it could have swayed one way or the other. But given all of that excitement, there also was a lot of unknowns going into that 2025 season for Utes fans. And one of those questions was answered on the very first play as new quarterback Devin Dampier threw a pass to Smith Snowden. And yes, I did say that name correctly. The cornerback that you guys all know and love as a Utes fan, he caught an 11-yard pass. And head coach Kyle Whittingham, he did state that he is going to have some defensive guys such as Smith Snowden run some plays on offense. It will be a game-by-game basis on how often that will happen. But in this case, that 11-yard play would be the first of an 11-play, 75-yard drive, which was finished by new running back Wayshawn Parker rushing into the end zone from 13 yards out. But freshman kicker Dylan Curtis would end up missing the point after attempt. So the score would be 6-0. The following possession had 3 plays for Smith Snowden, which included a 6-yard rushing touchdown by him to put Utah up 13-0. Though UCLA was excited to see their new SEC quarterback in Nico Imaliava and what he is capable of doing for his team, to end the first quarter, Logan Fano would show why Utah's defensive line should be feared as he sacked Imaliava for 13 yards to create a 4th and 24 opportunity. Now, Utah would continue their dominance in the first half, driving down the field with another passing touchdown, but this time it was to linebacker Lander Barton. So again, 2 defensive guys scoring offensive touchdowns in the first half. Barton would get a 14-yard receiving touchdown to give Utah the 20-0 lead. Then UCLA, they seem to have taken that score personally, especially with it coming on their home turf. But on their next possession, they would drive down the field, and Imaleava, he would throw a 19-yard touchdown pass to former Utah Ute running back Anthony Woods to give the Utes a 20-7 lead going into halftime. And you might be thinking, Alma, I've never heard of Anthony Woods, or when I look him up, it shows that he didn't play for Utah. Reason being, he was on their roster. He just never saw time on the field. Um, so he was with the Utes last season. He did not receive any playing time, which I'm assuming, on top of their lacking performance last season, led to him wanting to transfer. And UCLA ended up being his new home. So really glad to see that in the first game of the season, he was able to get some sort of production. Now, coming back from the half, Utah would struggle to move the ball as easily as they did in the first half, but they would send Dylan Curtis, again, freshman kicker. They sent him out to attempt a 54-yard field goal for his first career attempt. And with this attempt, Curtis proved to the Utah fan base why he was ranked the best kicker in the country for the class of 2025, as he nailed the kick with little room to spare to give Utah the 23-7 lead. Then UCLA's Mateen Bagani would answer back with a 56-yard field goal of his own to keep the Bruins within striking distance, 23-10. Utah's response was very methodical, with their very next possession being a 21-play, 80-yard drive, resulting in a Dampier rushing touchdown on 4th and goal at the 2-yard line to give Utah the 30-10 lead. Utah would then hold UCLA scoreless on their next 2 drives, while Utah would score on their next 2 drives, with Dallin Bentley getting a receiving touchdown with a failed 2-point conversion, and then Nakiri Rogers with a rushing touchdown, leaving us at the final score of 43-10. And my prediction from last week, it was definitely much closer than what the final score ended up being. My prediction was 27-21. With this win, Utah did make their way into the top 25 according to the AP poll released earlier today. They are ranked number 25. And with this performance, Devin Dampier was the co-Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week with Iowa State's Rocco Beck. And then also the Old Trapper Big 12 Beef of the Week, which is the offensive and defensive lines of the week, were both won by Utah. So that is speaking so loudly to the NCAA that Utah has a good team. And they went up against a Power 4 school. So we'll see what will happen for Utah going forward. Is this just a one-off thing? I'm sure Utes fans are hoping that this will be a consistent thing throughout the season, but ultimately it is game 1. Teams are still figuring out who they are, and as the season goes on, chemistry will build, and we will really see how these teams turn out in the long run. But for Utah's next game, it'll be on Saturday, September 6th versus Cal Poly at 4 p.m. Mountain Time on ESPN+. Again, you can tune into the College Football Saturday show from 10 a.m. to noon for the pregame analysis on the KSL Sports Zone on 97.5 FM, 1280 AM, and the KSL Sports app. But then following the game, you can tune into the Utes postgame show, again, which will be on KSL Sports Zone at 97.5 FM and the KSL Sports app. My prediction for their next game against Cal Poly, I believe it will be a larger blowout, similar to what BYU was able to do to Portland State. I believe Utah will win 66-10, but that doesn't mean that there are going to be players on the Cal Poly side that you shouldn't be worried about. Their quarterback, Ty Deffenbach, he will definitely catch Utah off guard to start the game, but I believe Utah should be able to make adjustments to contain the dual threat quarterback fairly quickly. Now, the final Division I game that took place in Utah was between Utah State as they welcomed UTEP, University of Texas El Paso. That game was at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time on Saturday on the CBS Sports Network. Another team that had a lot of unknowns is Utah State, with near 80 total transfers going into this season. Utah State would get on the board first with a 49-yard field goal from kicker Tanner Rinker. For some reason, I had an autocorrect in my notes. Oh no. Which would put Utah State up 3-0. But after that score, UTEP and Utah State would exchange a couple of punts. But then Malachi Nelson, the former 5-star recruit, their quarterback, was able to find Kenny Odom for a 34-yard touchdown to take the lead 7-3. Just as the first quarter was coming to a close, Utah State was on their first play of the drive when Miles Davis scored a 58-yard rushing attempt to take back the lead 10-7. UTEP would start the second quarter. They looked focused on the run, but then Nelson would switch things up, which ended up resulting in an interception for the Aggies' Noah Flores. USU would then get a field goal out of that turnover with a 28-yard field goal from Rinker to make it 13-7. Then following the Utah State possession, Bryson Barnes would heave a 52-yard passing touchdown to Brock Lane to make it 20-7. And then going into the half, Carlos Arilola would hit a 52-yard field goal for UTEP to go into the half 20-10. After a 12-yard touchdown run by Bryson Barnes and a 2-point conversion, the third quarter would be filled with punts from both sides. That touchdown and 2-point conversion would put the Aggies up 28-10. Then UTEP would end up scoring a touchdown to start the fourth quarter from a 2-yard run from Ashton Emery, but they had a failed 2-point conversion. Again, the two teams would do exactly what they did in the third quarter and exchange multiple punts, which would eventually lead to our final score of Utah State beating UTEP 28-16. My prediction was 35-24, with Utah State being the winner. So as far as wins, I was correct 3 for 3. As far as the scores, honestly, this Utah State UTEP game was probably the closer one just because of margin. Because the official margin was 12. I thought it would be 11. So I'll give myself a little pat on the back for that one. But as far as their next game, it's not going to be as easy. It'll be on Saturday, September 6th at number 19 ranked Texas A&M at 10:45 a.m. Mountain Time on the SEC Network. There will be a radio pregame that will start at 9:45 a.m. Mountain Time on the KSL Sports Zone on 1280 a.m. and the KSL Sports app with Scotty. The full game coverage will also continue on 1280 a.m. in the KSL Sports app. Then following the game, tune into the Aggies post-game show, which again will be on 1280 a.m. and the KSL Sports app. Now, my prediction for this game, it will not be in the Utah State Aggies' favor, but it will be in the Texas A&M Aggies' favor. I believe that it will be 49-28, just because Texas A&M beat UTSA, a team that I would say is the same caliber as UTEP, 42-24, and I don't expect them to slow down. If anything, I see that as a learning game for them, and now that they have some more difficult talent to face, I believe that Texas A&M will teach Utah State a lesson, unfortunately, early in the season. For Utah State's sake, get these losses out of the way early, and it's the number 19th ranked team in the country. So if you can hang with them, hold your head up high. Now, switching sports to the Utah Royals in the NWSL, on Friday, they did the unthinkable. The Royals got a convincing win over Portland Thorns FC. With that game, Paige Monahan, she got her first goal of the season, giving the Royals a 1-0 lead. But then in the second half, KK Ream became the youngest player in NWSL history to score a goal at the age of 16 years and 53 days, giving Utah the 2-0 lead. But then in extra time, as fans were cheering for a shutout, Julie DeFore got a goal past Mandy McGlynn, but Utah would ultimately get the 2-1 win. And even though McGlynn did allow that one goal, she ended up having a career high in saves with 11. Think about that. 11 saves from one goalie is crazy. Uh, so for their next game, it's going to be on Saturday, September 6th at North Carolina Courage at 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time on the Ion channel. Pregame will start at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on the KSL Sports Zone on 97.5 FM, 1280 a.m. in the KSL Sports app. The game broadcast itself should be on 97.5 FM until the youth post game starts, but full broadcast will be on 1280 a.m. and the KSL Sports app. Then the post game show will be on 1280 a.m. and the KSL Sports app. Now, for the Utah Jazz, they ended up filling their final roster spot with John Tonje as he signed on a two-way contract with the Jazz. He was drafted in the second round by them, and this ultimately means that either KJ Martin is out the door, there is a buyout for Kevin Love in the works, or there will be a compensation trade that will happen just because Martin is currently on a non-guaranteed contract, which means that if he is on the roster by a certain date, the money will become guaranteed. But as of right now, the Jazz owe him nothing. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes of KJ Martin, if he'll be a member of the Jazz to start off the 25-26 season, or will he go somewhere else? Who knows? But now moving to the Utah Mammoth. The season's right around the corner, guys. And the very first preseason game for them is in 19 days. And I know a lot of people are already counting it down, or they will be facing the Colorado Avalanche. But then their first preseason game back at the Delta Center is going to be in 30 days. Exactly 30 days from today. So I know a lot of people are really looking forward to it. But some information that we got before we got into the National Goalie Week, which I'll go into some more detail here in a moment. The NHL released the U.S. national broadcast schedule, and the Utah Mammoth had 11 games on that list. And in order, it is October 17th at home versus San Jose at 7 p.m. That game will be on ESPN Plus and Hulu. The next game is October 21st at home versus the Colorado Avalanche. That game will be at 8 p.m. on ESPN. Then we take a little bit of a jump to December 3rd at Anaheim at 8 p.m. on TNT. Then December 17th at Detroit at 5:30 p.m. On TNT as well. January 13th at home versus Toronto at 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus and Hulu. Then all the way to March 10th at Minnesota at 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus and Hulu. March 19th at Vegas at 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus and Hulu. March 24th at home versus Edmonton at 7:30 on ESPN Plus and Hulu. April 2nd at Seattle at 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus and Hulu. April 7th versus Edmonton at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. And then the final game of the season will also be nationally broadcasted April 16th versus St. Louis at 6 p.m. on ESPN. And one thing that you have to notice is that out of all of these games, there's such a large chunk that starts in March. So it almost comes off as if the national broadcast team recognizes that the Utah Mammoth, they are going to be a threat this year. They could potentially be on a playoff run this year. So just seeing that schedule alone, knowing that there are higher forces that are excited about this team as well, should get the fans excited as well. So I know fans are ready to be back in the building. I'm ready to be back in the building. But while you wait for those days to come, like I mentioned earlier, it's National Goalies Week. So, give your Mammoth goalies the love they deserve. Connor Ingram, Karel Vejmelka, Vitek Vanacek. Give them the love that they deserve as we prep for this upcoming season. And again, our friends at the Utah Hockey Pod, you got Wolfie, you got Kelly, you got Cole. They just recently did an interview with Vanacek, and I highly recommend you check it out. There's a lot of good information there. Vanacek, he seems like he's very excited to be in Utah and, be fully embraced by this fan base that he's heard so much about. So again, show him some love. But also show some love to the Utah Hockey Pod, as our friend Cole Bagley, he's actually going to be hosting an event on Saturday, September 6th. And I know I've said Saturday, September 6th so many times in this podcast, but there's so many things that are going on that day. But if you want to do something prepping up to the Utah or BYU games, you should come join Cole and myself over at Hall Pass at the Gateway. That is at 153 South Rio Grande Street in Salt Lake City, Utah. There will be a game on free event, all ages event for the NHL 26 launch party. And with that, there is a link in the description of this video that should give you the direct link to reserve tickets, because even though it's a free event, we do need to make sure that we don't get overcrowded. So please RSVP there. There will be special guest appearances. There will be some giveaways. The NHL 26 tournament will be happening, which I will be participating in. So good luck to whoever's in second place. There will be some bubble hockey, if I'm not mistaken. And for those of you that maybe don't want to play the newer game, but want to embrace the older games in NHL 94, that should also be available at this event. There should also be some food and such at this game on NHL 26 launch party. So I highly recommend coming to it. Again, the link is in the description of the video, so go check it out. But with that being said, that's another bean on the scene. There's so many interesting things that are happening in the state of Utah. And with football now in full swing, just wait until we get NBA and NHL back and, RSL playing once again after they have this quick little break. It's going to be a lot of really cool things. I know it's going to lead to a lot of sleepless nights for myself, but this is what I signed up for, and it puts a big old smile on my face. So, again, that is another bean on the scene. I am Alma Bean, and y'all enjoy the rest of your day.